college campus crime.
A white male has been shot.
We had no idea why anyone would want to harm him.
A story that can't be believed.
It was difficult to believe he could make up such an interesting story.
But is the truth stranger than fiction?
He reacted spontaneously when they presented a weapon. Then he fled to outdoors because he was clearly outnumbered.
Fayetteville, Arkansas, a quaint college town. But one morning, a call to 911 shatters the easy pace of student life.
911, what's your emergency? Where are you going to be at? Okay, sir, I'm going to have the police head that way.
14 County, I'll be responding to that shooting.
Dispatch advised us of a shooting at an apartment complex near the University of Arkansas.
We have our gunshot victim. He's been shot. He's awake. He's breathing. We're just now getting here. So that's all the information I have at this time. All right.
The victim is Doug Norwood, a 36-year-old law student.
Can I talk with him a minute? I interviewed the victim while he was in the ambulance prior to him being transported to the hospital. The victim indicated that there was a knock on the door. He opened up the door, learned that there was two investigators. He allowed them into the residence. A scuffle ensued. He fled with them chasing him. There were shots fired, and the victim received gunshot wounds as a result.
With injuries to the chest and leg, Norwood is rushed to the hospital before he can complete a statement. Detective Mike Mitchell picks up the case.
A white male has been shot, one victim, two suspects.
Okay, you got the area secure?
We do. We've got officers in the area.
Okay, well, we'll go upstairs.
Okay.
One of my first theories was that it was a random robbery.
But nothing appears to be missing from the apartment.
This is where the victim indicated that the struggle took place. There was shots fired at that point. That's where he struck.
All right.
He takes off down the stairs this way. This is the last place he saw the suspects.
All right. Did he recognize the attackers at all?
No, he had never seen them before.
Never saw them. Were both white males?
As far as I know.
Okay. Did you find anything else in the rest of the apartment?
This is the only area that we found anything. Everything has been checked, but there was nothing found.
Okay. I didn't think it was someone who's just trying to rob him, or they would have rushed him at the door. So I had a hard time trying to figure out what's going on.
Detectives begin running down other possibilities.
I thought that it could be a drug deal gone bad. We've had so much trouble in this area with drugs. It just seemed plausible to me that someone had come in either wanting money or wanting drugs from Mr. Norwood.
But the lead doesn't pan out.
We did not find any drugs in the house. We did not find any drugs on Mr. Norwood.
So far, investigators don't have much. They hope that witnesses can shed some light on the mysterious shooting.
I talked to some of the neighbors who had heard the gunshots. They saw Mr. Norwood running out of his apartment. They heard shots being fired at him as he was running. They really didn't know what happened.
And no one got a good look at the shooters. No witnesses, no evidence. And nothing that would make Doug Norwood an obvious target.
He was just a normal student, as far as we could find out. He had not been in trouble, was just trying to get an education. Why two men would come in on him and try to kill him without some kind of reason, we could not understand. He was just a normal guy. So what had happened?
Criminal profiler Dale Hinman has worked with investigators on some of their toughest cases. And when she studies the Norwood files, she has a hunch.
When I read the initial reports, I began to wonder if there was someone who was in his past that might have held a grudge against him, and I really wanted to explore this possibility further.
Is Doug Norwood a victim of a random attack, or is something from his past catching up with him? 36-year-old law student Doug Norwood has survived a murder attempt, but the suspects are still at large. Agent Hinman hopes a visit to Norwood's apartment will give her some new insight into the attack.
I really felt it was so important to go to the crime scene. I wanted to see where the shooting occurred and what was around the apartment, then to dig deeper into the victim's past to find out if he was a targeted victim, who would want to target him. Hi, Sergeant Mitchell. Good to see you.
Good to see you. This is the complex where Mr. Norwood was shot. It was on the second floor.
I noticed that this is really close to the campus. Are most of the people who live here students at the university?
They are. Most of them are. There are very few people here who are working type people.
Well, and if most of them are attending the university, it seems like this would be a high traffic area, so there should be a lot of people walking and driving around, is that right?
But that's what we thought, and why they picked this time of day when students are coming and going puzzled us.
It seems like that if somebody was here specifically, say, to commit a burglary, that the passage of the people through this area all during the day, this would be an unexpected place for a burglary.
It really is.
Hinman concurs with Detective Mitchell. Robbery is not the likely motive.
This is Mr. Norwood's apartment. This is where the incident took place.
What did he say happened that morning?
He said that two people had come to the door. They presented themselves as investigators looking for another student. Mr. Norwood let them in.
Did he know the student they were investigating?
No, he did not. He had invited them in. There was no forced entry, no pushing Mr. Norwood. We thought it strange that there was no attack on him until he had sat down. There was plenty of opportunity.
Exactly. It seems like it would make more sense. It would be a more spontaneous attack as opposed to wait until he gets comfortable. Using a ruse to enter the victim's apartment suggests that they wanted to size him up. They really didn't have a plan, but we interpret it as a lack of experience.
Hinman now considers why Norwood would be a target for these criminals.
It just doesn't make sense that a law school student would be targeted for this type of crime. Maybe this is more related to someone who holds a grudge against him, someone from his past.
We're checking that now.
But then, while still recovering from the attack, the victim himself makes a stunning accusation.
This is Sergeant Mitchell. May I help you? Mr. Norwood called me at the police department and stated that he thought maybe he did know who was trying to kill him.
His girlfriend, Kathy's ex-husband, Larry Gray.
Larry and I had been married about 9 years, and it had been a very bad marriage. He had left me on numerous occasions for other women, so I asked him for a divorce, and the divorce was supposed to be final on the day that Doug was shot.
Did jealousy drive Gray to arrange a hit on Norwood? There's only one way to find out.
We went to Tulsa to talk to Mr. Gray, and Mr. Gray stated that he knew nothing about Mr. Norwood's attempted murder.
But detectives need some independent corroboration, so they arrange for a polygraph test.
Do you intend to answer truthfully each question on this test today?
Yes.
Have you lied to the authorities about this case?
No.
And it turns out that he did pass the polygraph.
With Larry Gray cleared as a suspect, police are once again out of leads. But just when it seems the case will never be solved, Doug Norwood calls 911 again. He's had another brush with death.
University Police Inspector George. Hey, Mr. Norwood, I need you to calm down for me. Where are you going to be at? Okay, you're in the big parking lot by the football stadium? Okay, sir, I'm going to go ahead and send the fire department and have the police head that way.
University of Arkansas police detectives Swearingen and Herring get the case.
We receive a call at the University of Arkansas Police Department that a vehicle has exploded in one of our college parking lots.
The car belongs to Doug Norwood.
He said that he had entered the vehicle, turned the key on, heard a very loud explosion and a tremendous amount of smoke poured into the passenger compartment, and he jumped from the vehicle and ran.
Officers immediately realized this was no accident.
As far as the amount of damage, is this consistent with what you've seen before?
No, most of the time the flames are going to be in the passenger area or near the fuel tank in the rear. This one was all in the front area.
I was a little surprised in that there really was minimal damage to the vehicle. Normally, if a bomb has been placed in a vehicle, you're going to see a great deal of damage. I had doubts about what had really occurred here. Certainly, something was not right.
Investigators now wonder if Doug Norwood could be staging these mysterious murder attempts himself.
Was this something Doug was doing himself to gain attention? Did it in some way connect with the shooting in Fayetteville? It's a situation where you really don't know at the time exactly what is going on.
To find out, investigators give Norwood a polygraph test.
Do you occasionally lie to protect yourself?
No.
Do you know for sure who's trying to kill you?
No.
And the results confirm investigators' darkest suspicions.
And Mr. Norwood failed the polygraph. The whole thing led us to believe maybe Mr. Norwood knew more than he was telling us.
Is Doug Norwood trying to engage investigators in some type of psychological game? A bomb has exploded under Doug Norwood's car, but after he fails a lie detector test, police have to wonder if he planted the bomb himself.
All we knew for a fact was that Doug Norwood was a victim for the second time. There was some skepticism on our part, because what's the odds of that happening to someone twice in a row? Hi, how are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Agent Hinman knows a visit to the crime scene will help determine if this was staged.
Hey, Dale, right down the aisle here on the right is where the explosion took place.
Well, how much pedestrian and vehicle traffic is typically in this area at that time?
This is the largest general parking lot for the university. The majority of the students will try to park in here first. So there would have been a tremendous amount of vehicle and pedestrian traffic in the area.
This seems like such a high-risk crime for the offender because at any given moment somebody could have seen him planting the bomb in Mr. Norwood's car.
One of the things that we have to decide is Doug Norwood actually telling us the whole story, or is someone out here really trying to kill him?
The investigators had reason to be suspicious of Doug Norwood, but a polygraph is an investigative tool, and failing a polygraph doesn't always mean guilt.
Hinman concludes it's unlikely that Doug Norwood arranged his own shooting and planted a car bomb. But if it wasn't Doug Norwood, who was it?
The methodology used in this attack on Doug is entirely different than what was done in the first attack. So again, that's extremely puzzling.
Based on the number of attacks, Hinman thinks Doug Norwood really is the victim and that he's still in danger.
It was clear that someone was highly motivated to either harm him seriously or kill him. They needed to know who had this motive and why.
To move the case forward, university police go back to the beginning.
So my next step was to begin, point by point, step by step, verifying everything that he had told me that I could verify.
But that takes time. The one thing Norwood fears he doesn't have.
I was scared to death. I was scared that they were going to permanently hurt me somehow or another. I never get through law school. So I knew that I would have to protect myself.
Still convinced that Larry Gray is behind the attacks, Doug and Kathy do some digging on their own, and they begin focusing on a strange conversation Kathy had a few weeks back with her ex-husband.
Larry told me he had hired a private investigator out of Florida to prove that Doug was a bad guy. I did not believe that, but I asked him how he found this private investigator, and he said he found him in the back of a magazine.
Doug and Kathy begin searching for the private investigator hired by Larry Gray.
So we went to the convenience store, and Doug bought a few magazines. When he was looking through the magazines, he was sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden he jumped up. He had found an ad that said gun for hire, all jobs considered. And he said he didn't hire a private investigator, he hired a mercenary to kill me.
University Police, this is John.
Doug and Kathy immediately notify police about the classified ad.
The advertisement appeared that it could be a private investigator type ad where you might check someone's background. On the other hand, you could read behind the lines and it might be that other services could be provided as well.
The classified advertisement really added to the investigators' suspicion that Larry Gray was the mastermind behind these crimes.
If the person hired by Larry Gray is a hitman, will investigators find him before he finds Doug Norwood? Doug Norwood is convinced his girlfriend's ex-husband has hired someone to kill him. Now, investigators have to prove it.
Investigators always follow every lead they receive, but this lead looked really promising, and it was based on the victim's own instinct. Larry Gray was the only person that Mr. Norwood could possibly even imagine would want to harm him.
We need to do some background inquiries.
And when detectives research the private investigator in the classified ad, Doug Norwood's story comes to life.
We had the local authorities in the Florida jurisdiction check into the individual, and we learned that Larry Gray had contacted this gentleman and asked that harm be done to Doug.
But just as investigators are building a case against Larry Gray, they get another frantic call from Norwood.
Doug called us one day, indicated he felt like he was being followed. He provided us a vehicle description and a tag number. University, we're going to be following a tan Ford Taurus. We're going to be southbound on Garland.
Detectives decide to intercept the car.
We arrived just in time to see the vehicle that Doug had described to us.
And when the detectives approach the car, they are in for a shock.
It was obvious very quick that something was not right. Protruding from underneath a coat was the barrel of a rifle. On the floorboard, right under where the driver's legs would be, was a machine gun.
Detectives immediately arrest the man. His name is Michael Wayne Jackson. And after several hours of questioning, Jackson cracks.
During the course of the interview, we did learn, in fact, that Larry Gray hired Michael Jackson to come to Fayetteville and to kill Doug Norwood.
But he wasn't the first hitman Gray hired.
We learned that Michael Jackson was aware of several individuals that had come to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and in fact had participated in the shooting of Doug Norwood.
Jealousy over Kathy and Doug's relationship motivated Gray to try to kill Norwood. And Gray knew he'd be a suspect if Doug Norwood was murdered. so he took precautions to look innocent.
Investigators later learned that Larry Gray had planned this crime even more thoroughly than anyone could have possibly imagined. He researched and practiced for weeks on how to beat the polygraph test.
Jackson's statement led to the arrest and conviction of Larry Gray and 4 other members of the hitman ring. Gray pled guilty to conspiracy to murder. Doug Norwood completed law school and is now a partner in a law firm. He and Kathy got married a few years after the murder attempts.
Looking back over it now, I realized that the incredible odds that they did not hurt me or kill me, because they tried so many times. And had these been professional killers like the mafia uses, obviously I wouldn't be sitting here with you. John Herring, I credit him and Jim Swearingen with saving my life, because had they not been able to arrest Michael Wayne Jackson on that particular January day, he may have been successful the next day in killing me.
This is a story that could have had a very different ending. If the investigators were not as skilled and dedicated as they were, then Doug and Kathy Norwood wouldn't be the successful lawyers that they are today, and these dangerous criminals wouldn't be behind bars where they belong.
Where do you hide when you know someone has been hired to find you and kill you? My guests today have the most bizarre but true stories of being stalked and victimized by contract killers. Later in the show, you'll meet a man who was shot twice in the chest, had his car bombed, and continues to live in fear of the man who wants him dead. You'll also meet a man who says someone put a contract out on his life 2 weeks ago because he refused to kill someone in return for $50,000. But what is it like for a man on the run with mob contracts on his head? My first guest is a notorious ex-boss of a Los Angeles mafia family. He has killed, admittedly, 5 men and helped in the slaying of 6 more. In 1977, he joined the witness security program and started talking and became the highest mafioso ever to turn against the mafia. He has spent now nearly 10 years living in seclusion because of his testimony against such high boss figures, bosses of bosses, and Teamster presidents. But just a few weeks ago, the Witness Protection Program released him. Now he is afraid of being killed. He tells all in this book. It's called Vengeance is Mine, authored by veteran reporter Michael Zuckerman. He is coming to us via satellite now from a location that we are not revealing. He will be seen in shadow. We did invite him to appear in our studio, but he refused, saying that Chicago is too dangerous. Please welcome former mafia killer Jimmy the Weasel Fracciano to the show. Jimmy, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Are you feeling let down by the government because you were let out of the Witness Protection Program?
Well, I knew sooner or later they were going to take me off, but it came so sudden.
Uh-huh.
They should have given me a little time to get prepared.
Uh-huh.
So I knew it was going to happen sooner or later.
Uh-huh. And so do you feel that you're a walking dead man?
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
Because I had to go back to places where, you know,
and because you have killed 5 men, participated in the divine retribution here?
It's, the book is called Vengeance is Mine. The author made that headline, and I don't know. My vengeance was against the L.A. family.
What?
But I made a deal with the government that I would testify in anything I had knowledge of, which I did. I kept my promise.
Do you think the government has now not kept its?
Well, I don't think they have. I think there should be an exception.
Why? Why? Because you've talked more than anybody?
Well, because, you know, my life is in danger more than anybody. Let's put it that way.
So, do you remember when you were first initiated into the mob? Do you remember the day?
No, I know it was in late 47 or early 48, 1948.
And at the time that you were initiated, is there some kind of initiation ceremony that goes on?
Yes, there is.
What happens?
Well, the 5 of us got initiated on the same day, and I went in first, and the boss says something in Italian, and they prick your finger, draw blood, and they take you around and kiss every member of the family and introduce you to everybody, and then you're a made man.
Is it like what we saw in The Godfather? This lifestyle?
No.
It isn't?
Well, no, very, very little.
What's little?
Some things were true, you know. Evidently, the person who wrote that book must have had some kind of information, but I wouldn't say it's all true.
Well, I want to know specifically, when you are contracted to kill someone, is it a head boss who tells you, or is it someone else who wants the person killed? In the 5 killings that you participated in, was it the head boss who told you to do it?
Yeah, the boss tells you to do it. You have to do it. If you don't do it, they'll probably kill you. But he gives the orders, and the only people that know about it are the people that are going to do it. In other words, the whole family don't know who is doing who.
And so that's to protect people within the family? Or is it that you don't trust people within the family?
Well, that's the code. That's the code that they have. The less people that know, the better it is.
Right.
So I wouldn't tell nobody if I did something, nobody in the family, that I would tell that I did it.
And so, were you successful the first time you set out to kill somebody?
I was successful on all of them.
Okay. Because later we're going to talk to some people who just bungled up everything.
No, not when I participated, no.
How'd you kill them?
2 we shot and 3 we strangled.
And the 2 that you shot, did you catch them by surprise?
No, we had a meeting set up, and it took like 2 seconds and it was over.
And so, did you use a silencer, or were there people present?
No, we had a 38, Smith & Wesson 38 revolver.
Yeah, that's not quite a silencer.
No.
Were you afraid of being caught? Or did you
they picked me up the next day after I killed them 2 guys, but they couldn't prove anything. And they kept me, I don't know, 15, 16 days, and then they released me.
Because they couldn't prove anything?
Right.
And why couldn't they prove anything? Because you'd left no clues?
Right.
Yeah. And the 3 people that you strangled, did you find them in bed and strangle them, or you see them walking down the street and you strangle them?
No, we did one in my house and one in another fellow's house in San Diego and another one in Upland, California. But we buried them all in the same place in a vinery, grape vineyard.
So during this time, this was during what period when you were a hired contracted killer?
Well, that was in the 50s.
Uh-huh. The last time you killed somebody was what year?
53.
53. And during this period, when you're killing people and you know that this is your job to kill people, do you have any remorse at all, or is it just a job?
It's just a job.
Okay, we'll be back. We're talking to Jimmy the Weasel Farciano. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking to Jimmy the Weasel Farciano. Where'd you get this?